On Hot Topics today, we're going to be looking at the issue of government of the day having a human face. What do we mean by that? You know, when you hear government, you're probably thinking of people in high positions that are unreachable, that are unrelatable, people who you just feel take decisions that concern you without necessarily thinking about you in the process. Case study is the recent ongoing face-off between Kaduna State Government and the Labour Union, as well as TUC, the Trade Union Congress. We're going to be looking at it today. How could that situation have been handled to prevent it from getting to where it is at the moment? My name is Uju, and I welcome you to Hot Topics. On the show today, I have two journalists in the house, and together we're going to do our best to, look at different perspectives on this particular issue and see how best we can arrive at a solution, so to speak. Welcome, Mr. Fortune Musa. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And you've seen him before on the show, Kunle Adeni, a journalist par excellence. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's just jump straight into it. Okay, Kaduna State, a lot of people want to be overdramatic and say, oh, it's boiling. I wouldn't use that expression, boiling, but I would say that there's some kind of fisticuffs going on between the workers or the union, labor union, and the government. So much so that some people have been declared wanted. So let's talk about how do we bring governance to the people with a face, so that people feel like it's not a case of them versus us, but it's them and us. Fortune, you can have the floor.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to look at it from this perspective. The labor union in itself has, over the last few years, well, say last 5 to 10 years, continually lost its credibility, lost its tact, lost its social capital with the people. So when you talk about fisticuffs between the Kaduna State Government and the labor union, that is still two big elephants, leaving out the worker.
The worker.
Because the worker himself still doesn't feel represented pretty much by labor, even though in this case, it sounds like the labor union might be the only voice that could be speaking, but talking about that alignment, talking about, look, our plight is being, spoken about and all of that. I don't think the average worker, believes in the labor unions as much as they should. The reasons why I'm saying this is the immediate past industrial action that Labour proposed concerning fuel price hike and all of that would show you the workers' disposition towards whatever Labour says. To the people, Labour is basically looking out for itself, talking about those who are out there. So, so we still have three parties, even in this situation you're talking about. Now, and that's the government, Labour, and the worker itself. But beyond that, talking about putting a human face to it, the policies that the Kaduna State government is trying to put forward are not terrible. They are not the worst policies. In fact, they are really good if we are talking about proper governance and putting the structures in place. But it's like trying to do the right things at the wrong time.
So it's an issue of timing for you.
Timing, basically, is what I'm looking at. Because, I mean, we've been through quite a lot over the last in the last 1 year. We've been in and out of a recession.
Yes.
We have come through the coronavirus situation. There's an insecurity situation. And all of these things put together just puts the worker in a place where they might be feeling a bit, left alone, at the end of the day. And that's where the whole human face issue comes up. And I cannot say that we're putting a human face to issues around, citizens in Nigeria.
All right, he's talking about timing. Now, how about the issue of about 7,000 workers being laid off because we're trying to right-size our workforce in a state? Is the issue here the fact that that number of people are laid off, or is the issue about time?
Well, there are three different issues brought into one, and I think you want to look at it from the point of not just the timing. You want to look at the sensitivity of the issue and you want to, because you talk about drawing the government close to people having that human face. Now, nothing really wrong in that policy.
Okay.
To start with, because I'm just particular about the language now used. No, usually we say it straight up. You are downsizing because you know that you need to trim some people from your workforce. And
Yes.
why? Because, like the governor rightly said, you do not have the resources to be able to cater for their needs. And when you want to talk about the issue of resources, catering to the needs of the people, like you rightly said, you said, in fact, we had reports that over at least 60,000. Even before now. So maybe the 7,000, the latest, but when you look at the total, 60. And what led to this? Yes, you had resources of the state not readily available to cater for the needs of these people.
Yes.
And so when you look at how much you are spending on your expenditure costs and how that affects the running of the government at large, then yes, there's a need for you to take decision. But let's also not take it away from the fact that even before you had this challenge of revenue not being enough, the question is, we have had this debate of minimum wage. How are the workers themselves fed? Had the state government lived up to an extent to its obligation in meeting those demands? Or did we see this back and forth initially between Labour and the federal government, where there were the NLC, where they said, oh, we are going to pay the agreed minimum wage is 30,000, looking at our current realities. And then for some reason, some states have been saying we can only still pay the 18,000. At some point, some states have said we may not even be able to pay that 18,000 naira minimum wage. We may have to shut down the ration of how much we can pay. And when you begin to look at these issues, you look at the economic realities as it is right now of the country and of the workers, the kind of work you expect them to do, the level of productivity you expect from them, is it commensurate with the amount that they earn? Because you want to ask yourself, by international laws, what is the average minimum wage? And are we at that level where we say, oh, workers are working several hours, 7 to 8 hours. In Nigeria, sometimes workers work more than the usual 7 to 8 hours. What is the value of what they are gaining for the level of the amount of work that is being placed on them? At a point in time, do you wear the workers out, or do you motivate them enough to be able to do more? And that is where you can talk about putting a human face to this. Because when you have a situation where workers are doing work for that long, they are not getting remunerated for as much as the level of work, then the question is, does it increase their productivity level, or does it bring, because we need to get to the root of all of this. I understand that there is a need for you to cut down those that are not productive, because look, if we are going to be honest and sincere, if you go to our civil service, there are a chunk of people who should not even be there. There are a chunk of people who are not productive enough. And so, and the civil service is where the state really gets a lot in terms of economic benefit. It's where the state should really get enough in terms of revenue generation. But the question is, how productive are they to start with? Now, on realizing that they are not productive, did you also, which is back to some of the points I've made, did you understand why they were not productive?
Okay.
What is it about the working environment that has made the workers less redundant? Not making any excuse for the workers. But like you said, in every organization, you must be able to account for what exactly is wrong, what exactly is the management not doing, and then how do we meet up so that the demands that we are also placing on these workers, they are able to meet up with those demands and we can get the best out of them. So if you still have a country where the issue of minimum wage is still a challenge for you, you are not paying salaries. Workers are owed as much as 3 months, 5 months, in some cases 1 year. And this is where a lot of people disagreed with the approach by the governor.
Okay, so what would have been ideal? Sorry to cut you off there. What do you think would have been ideal? So we have reports that they were owed prior to that time, and now the number of people who have been laid off, the governor of the state, Governor Erufai, is saying that they do not have the finances to pay them severance pay. So in that situation, well, okay, there is no money, but we need to lay you off because you're not productive. How do we marry this so that it's not a human relations disaster?
Can I say something first,
yes,
before he jumps in?
Yes.
Now, in the first place, at what point did you realize that you could not meet up with the payment of salaries? At what point? Now, don't also forget that when you're talking about expenditure costs, payment of salaries and the likes of them. It's covered from the FAC, money that comes from the Federation account,
Yes.
which is supposed to take care of the expenditure cost and the running cost as it concerns governance. What exactly have you been doing with those funds before now?
Okay.
Now, when you started owing them salaries, did you come at a meeting and say, okay, we are going to lay off these workers? To put that human face, how many months are we owing them? Can we clear the outstanding of what they were being owed, and then at least give a face that say, oh, yes, we need to trim down, but we're not going to leave you guys empty-handed. We know you have families to cater for. So we are on our own little part. We will pay what we are owing you, and then maybe when it is convenient, we can begin to look at severance packages. But in a situation where you do not even pay them what they were being owed before, you lay them off, and then you still do not pay them their severance packages, there is nobody that will be excited about that situation. So it's either you find a way of retaining them, let them have a means of livelihood that they can continue to sustain, or you cater for what happens to them when you lay them off and you put them on the streets.
Right,
because that also poses a security threat on its own.
On its own, yeah. So, fortunately, I think
Well, I mean, I think my colleague has made a lot of very important points now. But I mean, when we talk about the roots of these problems, I think the roots even dig deeper.
Okay.
So we're talking about severance packages, capacity, and all of that. If we really want to look at the productivity of the Nigerian citizen, can we say that we can measure productivity by engaging people in civil service?
So how
If
would
we
you
say,
propose?
you know, because sincerely, if you think about it, what does it take to run a civil service office? What are we doing? I grew up in Kaduna. I remember the days of the Kaduna textile industry is that Barnawa now? I can't remember, on that road. The factories that were there. Those factories used to hold, say, 3, 5, 8,000 workers. When people close in the evening and the buses come out and you see people going home, it's in thousands people used to go home. Now, if we don't have enough resources to manage people because civil service has become like a welfareist arrangement, okay? So create this parastatal and then just, get people and just employ them. To do what? That's why you go to a civil service office. If you give somebody a file here, there are like 4 people that the file will go through before it gets to where it's going. Okay. All the 4 have nothing to do with the file. All of them. So from this person is just supposed to minute it and pass it to this person. Because we have to create activity. Yeah. And that's where the issue of right sizing comes in and all of that. Okay. So if we have had resources coming in all this while, we have internally generated revenue. We have the opportunity. Kaduna is an autonomous government. It can relate with international organizations, but all the states go to get loans, right? Yes. What do we do with these monies? Why don't we have, if there was an alternative, will these people be complaining about what to do next? Because if you think about it, coming out of the economic realities we have come out of, COVID, all the issues, recession and all of that, it means that the dependence of the workers have increased. Definitely. People have lost their jobs and all of that. You are thinking, oh, at least my brother, my dad works in so and so ministry. At least what to eat we will have. And then all of a sudden you tell this person to get out of office. There's no alternative. There's nothing else to fall back on. Number of dependents have increased. You are facing a security challenge. Kaduna is number 2 in terms of our, after Maiduguri, Kaduna is number 2 in terms of security threats in the country. Even higher than Katsina and Zamfara.
But it's obvious that the governor is not exactly, how do I put it, ignorant of this scenario. So
which is why it is frustrating.
What's leading to this? Some people in some quarters have said it is clearly abuse of power. You just wake up one morning and you decide that this is what you want to do because of XYZ. Do you see it as abuse of power, or do you see it as, okay, I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what else to do. This is the only solution I have.
I totally think that it goes beyond abuse of power.
Okay.
I think that we have a situation where most of our leaders really do not know what to do anymore.
Out
They're bereft
of
ideas.
lack of capacity, or the situation around them doesn't give them the opportunity to do something.
I know you have something to say, but
Yeah.
but if you think about it, it's not a lack of. We've seen Governor Rufai in office before, here in the FCT. We saw what happened, but he was in a situation then where there was the kind of like was a platform created for good governance. He was under a boss that gave him power and said, you know what, I trust your judgment. I know that there's a system, there's a status quo, but you can go ahead, I'll back you up.
Okay.
So that gave him the power to have political will to do certain things. If you're in a system, for instance, at the federal level, why is it so difficult for us to be able to automate civil service activities, for instance? Bring all of our databases together, computerize our processes. I went to NHIS the other day. There's a room full of files.
Physical files.
Physical paper. From the ground to the ceiling. Why are we doing that? If you register a vehicle here in Abuja, right, it's on the national database. If you register a vehicle in Benue, it's not on the national database. So if I take your vehicle from Benue and bring it to Abuja, remove the plate numbers, and go to VIU, I can register it again. Why? There's no synergy in the database. Why is it like that? Because we have a system that incentivizes corruption. If you put the database together, then it can be tracked. That means the corruption of being able to do it again is eliminated. So this is what the governors, the leaders, everybody is facing. You want to, even if you have ideas you want to implement and all of that, you bring up these ideas, you bring advisors, they tell you these things. When you start doing it, the powers that be, the people who own the place, who own the country, in quotes, will tell you, look, this is not how it's been working. We can't take that. Remove this person. Do this. So it becomes frustrating. At the end of the day, the governor is trying to be good for his political party. He's trying to be good in the eyes of his boss. He has good governance ideas, but he cannot implement them.
Okay. Now, I know we have been focusing on Kaduna State because of this recent activity that just occurred there. Is this the case for all the other states, would you say? Southeastern, Southwest, is this the case? Do we still think this principle applies? Because the state of some states in Nigeria is worrisome. Is this the case?
Well,
would you say?
I'm glad you used that term. The state of states in Nigeria is worrisome, especially if you look at what the debt profile is right now in some of the states. My state is a very peculiar example. I think my state is number 25, number 26 on that list, talking about Osun State. Okay. So you can see the level of rot. You can
I
see
think
the
your
level.
state is still blessed.
Well, I don't know whether I will call it. I don't know whether I will call it a blessing or otherwise. But when you look at the figures, when you look at the statistics, look, I don't want to. I think the picture I painted with an El-Rufai, for instance, as at the time he was in Abuja. Now, I hope you know that power at the federal is different from power at the state.
Definitely.
The kind of power you will or the things you can do is different. You talked about backing. And I hope you know that at the center there are checks and balances. Which means there is an extent to, yes, the powers have been given to you. Yes, you have the backing. But there are still those that can checkmate your activities. That when you are swaying in the wrong direction, they can almost immediately trace you back.
So just to jump off that, right? If you think about it, the same FCT is where we have a minister now.
Yes.
We have had about 6 or 7 ministers after El-Rufai in Abuja at the federal level. What's the challenge? Where are they?
How many of them can you even mention after
That's the point. That's the point.
So it goes to show you that the way at which he was able to walk and the way at which he's able to govern now, they are two different sides of the coin.
I think he should have even been more powerful now because he's a governor.
He should have
Because
been
he's a
more
state
powerful. Well,
governor.
like he rightly pointed out, there are stumbling blocks around him. That's why even at the federal, we always say, What is it about getting into that